Good morning, everybody. Thank you for giving us a few extra minutes to adjust to what it takes to be having a commission meeting in person and also all the technical challenges. But for myself, I'm just so pleased to have the opportunity to see everybody and look you in the eyes instead of through a screen. And so this is the beginning of our celebration and journey back to the next normal. So welcome everybody, and we start with the roll call. Kelly.
Frank Walker, absent. Meg Carlson.
Present.
Russell Westerberg.
Here.
Major General Saylor.
Here.
Bill Vasconcelos.
He is presently looking around. We're going to pause and give him a few seconds to say here.
Okay.
In the roll call, Bill.
We'll note that he's present. Mayor Nancolas, absent. And Jamie Bosiger, present.
Thank you.
Quorum's present.
Thank you very much. So first order of old business is approval of the minutes from the Airport Commission meeting of October 7, 2020.
So moved.
Thank you very much, General. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Director Huck, please give us all the great news that's going on.
There has been quite a bit happening since October of 2020, and we've been sending you interim reports. So some of this might be a duplicate of some things that you've seen, but I thought it would be worthwhile for us to kind of recap where we've been in the last really year, 15 months. So we always start by talking about operational readiness. I won't read these all to you, but we have had a number of runway closures, mostly due to routine maintenance. Every year we're required to paint and do other maintenance work. We're getting ready for our FAA inspection, which they do every year. They did not do last year during the pandemic, so we're doing a little extra work to make sure that we're ready for that. As we all know, in transportation hubs, masks are still being mandated by the federal government. Our requirement comes through TSA as a security directive, as a health and safety security item. We still have announcements in the terminal and we have signage up. One thing that we've been working on probably over the last 6 months is development of a request for expressions of interest in some non-aeronautical property that we have. It's about 200 acres, and we requested expressions of interest. We received 7 proposals. 2 were for very specific parcels that entities had an interest in. The other were more general. We've narrowed it down to the top 3 proposers, and we are going through an evaluation process, interviews, but we're very optimistic about this. The developers that we've spoken to all think that this entire property could be developed within 10 to 15 years. So it will be great for the airport. It'll be an additional revenue source, and it also will be an additional revenue source for the city of Boise because it will increase the taxable value of the property. So it's really exciting. One of the things that we've been working on over the last year is this service animal relief area and nursing room. These are 2 items that are required if you're a medium hub. They're not required federally mandated if you're a small hub, which we are. But we are very close to being on the cusp of a medium hub. Also, we just think that this is a good thing to do. So over the last year, we've been working on the design. We have issued a bid process for this, and the bid has been issued. The contract has been issued. We expect that construction itself will take 60 days, and it will start literally any day now. They are in the process of getting their badges for access to the secure area. So we expect the project will be complete by August. One of the things that we've done during COVID is we've partnered with Crush the Curve. We partnered with them in December for a temporary testing site. We've also partnered with them to host the largest vaccination clinic in the state. I think they vaccinated a couple thousand people in their first vaccination, and now we're having a second vaccination clinic that is geared specifically towards the 12 and up. So that continues. We did want to bring to your attention a national issue that could impact Boise. If you've watched in the news or if you've tried to book a rental car, you may have seen this. But because of the chip shortage, there are a shortage of rental cars as well. So we just wanted to make you aware that this could potentially be an issue this summer. We're not seeing anything just yet, but it's very likely that rental cars will be older. They're going to keep the existing fleet. And we will just see how that plays out. One thing that we've noticed, and I'm going to get into a little bit more detail when we talk about air service, but we are seeing a very strong rebound in passenger travel, which is fantastic. But if you remember back in 2019, we did not have enough close-in parking, and so we were adjusting and repositioning employees, all of these different lots that we have. So we're back to that. We're back to repositioning employees, requiring people to park overnight in the shuttle lot, the economy lot, rather than close in. And then that will allow us to use this lot 30, which is this one here, for passenger parking rather than employee parking with all the changes that we're making. And we've announced several new flights and destinations since COVID, 7 new destinations, and we're starting to see them actually come to fruition. On May 28th, Allegiant kicked off their Nashville service. They have reported a very strong load factor. It's a Friday and Monday service, and it will operate through Labor Day. 27 nonstop destinations. This is our route map now. You can see the New York that's been added, Atlanta, Nashville, Austin, Dallas Love Field. We've also added in California, Orange County, Palm Springs, and then Everett, Washington. So quite a few destinations. You may have heard in the news, there's been discussion of Alaska adding a Pullman Moscow to Boise flight. That is not finalized yet, but the Board of Education did approve the proposal, and it would include 5 weekly flights. We think that that could be final next week, but it's not final until it's final. So, but that could be coming, which would bring us obviously to 28 nonstop destinations. I also wanted to mention that, obviously we're part of a larger industry, and Boise was actually recognized in an industry report on best practices for cultivating talent in the airport environment, and we were cited as a case study because of our Connect Boise initiative, where we meet with employees and supervisors every month to just check in on how employees are doing. I will say that this has been incredibly helpful during the pandemic because we laid the foundation. Prior to the pandemic, employees and supervisors were already meeting on a regular basis, and so when we went to modified work schedules, remote work, all of these things, employees and supervisors and employees had already built strong relationships over the last year, and that has been incredibly helpful during this COVID pandemic, and we've seen that bear out in our surveys of employees. I do want to recognize some of our employees have received some accreditations. The latest one is James Power. He received his certification on lighting maintenance. Our airfield lighting is obviously incredibly important. We need to have those lights working, and he's achieved this designation. He's one of many employees who, during this pandemic, made the extra effort to use that time to get certified in a particular area. So let's talk about passengers. April, we were only down 20% compared to 2019, which again, if we had talked about that a year and a half ago, we would all say 20%. Ugh. But we're still trending ahead of the national average. And I will say we are starting to see passenger traffic rebound, we're expecting to be back to 2019 levels. So we're down 2% through April over 2020 and 35% over 2019. If you remember 2020, early on, we had a pretty strong 2020, January, February, and then in March it dropped off considerably. These are our historic monthly passengers. Again, you can see that 2021 is starting to track right along to 2019. So this is a quarterly report that we receive from Mead and Hunt, where we look at how does Boise compare to our peers. You can see one of the metrics that we use is seats per capita. And you can see that our seats per capita is well above the average for our peer group, but also we're the second largest other than Spokane and Reno in terms of seats per capita. I found this one very interesting because several years ago we changed our peer group because we had it grown so much that our peer group was somewhat irrelevant because some of the smaller airports we were comparing ourselves to. So we moved to a larger group with larger passenger enplanements. And you can see Boise ranked #1 compared to our peers in terms of passengers, which is slightly surprising. Traditionally, Oklahoma City, Charleston, and Reno would all have been larger than Boise back in 2019. And today we have more passengers than they do. Some of the other ones, Spokane and Tucson and Providence are other examples of airports where they would have been larger than us probably in 2017 or 2018. And now, again, we're larger than all of them. We'll have to see what happens post-COVID if that trend continues. Market share. Again, you can see our market is pretty competitive, which bodes well for the passenger. Alaska and Southwest have traditionally been tied in terms of market share. And it seems that Alaska Airlines is edging out Southwest for that first place market share holder. This is our forward-looking schedule. This is based on the number of flights that are actually scheduled today that you could book on. You can see we are down slightly for the month of May compared to 2019, but starting in June, a 12% increase, July 21%, August over 30%, trending into the fall, and that's over 2019, which was a record year. This is a combination of things. This is airlines looking for places where they can have a profitable flight because we are not seeing the return to business travel just yet completely as a country, and also international travel continues to be limited. So airlines are really looking for places like Boise where there's strong demand, both leisure and business, and a growing community. So we will see if these flights come to fruition. Again, in 2020, we were projecting that we were going to see 10 or 15% growth in 2020 based on the flights. Obviously, there's a pandemic that did not come to fruition, but it seems that we are gathering 2020 growth and then growing again in 2021 is what this looks like. And so we will see, again, if these flights do continue to hold or if these schedules get adjusted as it gets closer. We have seen that airlines will adjust flights as it gets closer. But the bottom line is we are expecting a very busy summer travel season. So we invited a gentleman named Bill Swelbar, who is an industry analyst, out to speak to the Boise Chamber. And these charts are from his presentation to the Chamber. I hope that you can see it here on the screen. But there are 72 small hubs, again, which is where Boise falls, is in the small hub category as designated by the FAA. We are about, I think it might say in here somewhere, I think there's about, we're in the top 10% of those small hubs. And if you look, that black line there is growth in Boise compared to the small hub, which is the red line, and then compared to the US average, which is the orange line. So you can see how much more quickly we are growing in number of seats than the national average and also compared to our peers. And this is the same slide for throughput, number of passengers. So the first slide was seats, this is passengers. And again, the US average is at a 117, and this is per 100, we're going up to 138. So again, our growth is significantly exceeding both the national average and the US small hub. So again, you can see in 2015, these are the small hub airports out of 72. In 2015, Boise was number 9. In 2019, we were number 6. And then the seat change, again, 27% versus 32%.
Madam Chair. Rebecca, question back at the last 2 slides. I think what that's saying is that we don't have as many seats as other small hubs, but we're putting more passengers through, which I believe would make us more attractive to the commercial airlines because they'll make more money off more seats, off more actual passengers. Am I reading that correctly?
I think that would be the correct interpretation. That would be what we would translate to load factor. And so airlines, when they add seats, they want to see passengers in seats, and you're right. So our seats grew at 133, and our passengers grew at 138. So in that bears out, we have seen increased load factors as well as an increase in passengers. So yes, you are reading that correctly, interpreting that.
Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out, though, because that is an important point. This is another interesting point as we compare ourselves to our peers, and we've talked about this. Domestic points served, this is our small hub, the median, and you can see in every year we have outpaced what the median small hub is. Also from 2019 to 2021, most small hubs have actually lost service, and we've significantly gained service. So when we look at the number of airlines serving Boise, again, this shows the strength of our market and the diversity of our market. We have 8 airlines serving our market. 4 airlines serve about 80% and command about 80% of all traffic domestically. That would be American, Delta, Southwest, and United. And we have all of those carriers, plus we have Alaska, Allegiant, Frontier, and now JetBlue. So our airport is well represented. There's only, again, 8 of our peers who have, only 11% of our peers have 8 carriers. 1 has 9 and 1 has 10. So very well positioned when compared to our other small hub airports. Before I move on, Madam Chair, if you would like, I'd be happy to take questions about air service, and then we can move on to the BOI upgrade, or we can hold questions to the end. I'm happy to do it.
Anybody have additional questions around air service?
I have a question, Madam Chair. You talk about the small hub versus medium hub. At what point do we switch over to that, and what does that mean for the Boise Airport?
So FAA has designated 3 different categories of airports: large hub, medium hub, and small hub. Small hub is the largest category, and it's calculated based on the percentage of passengers as a total of the total passengers in the transportation system. So it's not always a set number of airports, it's based on the total percent of passengers. As our number of passengers increases, it's likely that we'll transition to that medium hub status. There's a couple of significant milestones that happen when you reach a medium hub. The first is your FAA grants, your formula changes. So right now we receive entitlement grants of about $6 million a year. When you transition to a medium hub airport, if you are collecting a passenger facility charge, which we are, then in exchange for being able to collect that passenger facility charge, you forego 50% of your federal grants. That's probably the single largest change Also, if you have a passenger facility charge, if you are a medium hub, then you are required to have a competition plan, depending on your makeup of your air service. So there's that. And then there's some other regulatory requirements that we talked about, like the SARA and the nursing mother's room. There's some different regulatory requirements, but probably the most significant one is the change in funding for AIP.
Thank you.
So Rebecca, we see where we are on the list. What's the projection when we will be there, or how many more passengers do we have to process through before we get to that level? Any idea?
That's really hard to predict because it's not just about how many passengers Boise has, it's about how many passengers are added into the national transportation system. So depending on the national growth, we did have, as part of a follow-up to our master plan study, we did have RS&H calculate that for us. What they estimated, they thought 2025. There's so many variables right now with the pandemic. I don't know if that's accurate. For one thing, I think we might continue to grow, and other airports growth may slow. So that could change it. Also, I think there's the possibility that FAA will continue for the next year or the next 2 years to continue to calculate and hold the hub status based on 2019 and base their funding formulas for 2021 on 2019, possibly for 2022. So I think there's some variables, but the short answer is we're probably thinking about 2024, 2025. But if they change the way they calculate it and we continue to grow at a faster rate than, or recover at a quicker rate than the rest of the country, it could be sooner.
And will that affect our upgrade plans from an FAA funding standpoint?
It's hard to say. It could potentially, but many of our upgrade plans are not contingent upon FAA funding. We use most of our FAA grant funds for airfield improvements and for equipment. So things like snow removal equipment, brooms, plows, those types of things. Fire trucks, those are about $500,000 each. And so we are working to renew our fleet and add to our fleet in terms of snow removal and our aircraft rescue and firefighting. It could impact funding for airfield improvements. But then those would become eligible for passenger facility charge funds. So as passengers, the rationale and the theory is if you are collecting that much through your passenger facility charge, it far outweighs what you're giving up in AIP funds. So even today, we probably are collecting about, not during the pandemic, but in a normal year, we anticipate we would collect about $7.5 million in PFC funds. So if we hypothetically move forward to a medium hub, I expect we probably would be collecting closer to $10 million in PFC funds. Therefore, we would give up half of our AIP, which would be about $3 million. That's the back of the napkin math. There's
Fingers and toes. Any other questions, follow-up questions? I have a question, Rebecca. In the past, we've occasionally offered incentives to airlines to add flights. Were any of these additional flights routes that were added, were those related to any incentives?
Some of them are eligible for incentives. I'm going to look at Sean because he probably remembers the specifics better than I do.
Yeah, so with the new flights, we added Atlanta, Delta's flight to Atlanta received an air service incentive. Alaska's flight to Palm Springs received an incentive. And then also Austin, that Alaska will begin, that will receive an incentive as well. The JetBlue flight to New York City doesn't last 90 days. And so that did not qualify for an incentive at this time.
Thank you. And second question, do we think the JetBlue New York City has potential to be longer in the future? Or do they usually trial and then extend? Or
it's usually a trial and they will extend. We've had conversations with them. They were positive about the level of bookings thus far. They were pleased to see they actually have more people originating in Boise and going to New York than they had anticipated. It's not quite evenly split, but there's more Boise to New York than they had anticipated. So I would say overall, they sounded very positive. We're still about a month, it's a month today that we are out for the inaugural flight. So there's still time for booking and that sort of thing. But I would say, yes, overall it was positive. And I think that we could see it continue, but we also will have to see what happens with the market and the industry. I think if they're successful, they will continue to operate it, keeping in mind that next year could be completely different and they'll have other options. For example, for international travel, JetBlue's doing JFK to London. So they may want to expand that. There may be other things that might be a higher priority in a non-pandemic time. But I'm optimistic that the route is performing well and that it would continue. But we'll see.
Thank you.
Okay, that leads us to our next topic, which is the BOI upgrade. Everyone has seen this photo before, and I just put it up to kind of refresh you for where we are. This is a little bit of a busy slide, and I won't read it all to you. The highlights are the public parking garage. The design is nearly complete. We will be issuing bids for that late summer, early fall. Right now, construction prices are very volatile, so I'm not sure what will happen. But that is the intent, is to move forward with building and starting that process earlier rather than later, because it seems that passenger travel is going to continue to rebound. The employee garage continues to be on hold. We have issued a contract for design of the consolidated car rental facility, and we expect that that will start and the design will be completed by this time next year, which means we'll start construction on that late summer of next year through March of 2024. We also have moved up the design of the Concourse A parking apron, because with all of these flights, it probably will not be a surprise to anyone, we are about out of parking spaces for aircraft at the terminal. So one of the things that we're doing is starting design for Concourse A sooner rather than later, with the idea that we could do construction on that next summer as well. Questions on timeline or phasing?
Chairman? Yeah. Rebecca, on the construction projects, you mentioned that construction is pretty tough right now. Have we gotten any early estimates whether there's going to be crews available or whether the bids are going to be exorbitant?
We have been having conversations with potential contractors about availability. It seems that there is some volatility in steel, but I don't think we're going to know until we actually issue the bids. So I think we have a sense that for a project of this size and scope, we think we'll be fine. I think if we were doing a smaller project, it would actually be a little bit more difficult because no one wants to do a small project or there's more risk. So we think that we can phase it and time it so that way we can minimize the risk, but we won't know for certain until we do bids. But it's a big enough project that there will likely be interest in it and we likely will get competitive bids. I think if we were trying to do a smaller project, 1 million, 2 million, I think there would be more risk and I think there would be less interest. So just to reiterate our different funding sources, our grant funding would be our airport improvement program funding. The passenger facility charge would fund concourse improvements, some other things. The customer facility charge is the fee that gets charged to the rental car contract. That would pay for the rental car facility. And then we would fund the parking garage with airport revenues. We would cash flow it, but we would also bond it and use the revenues from the garage to pay for the garage itself. Some of the other variables that we have out there are the Southeast Cargo Apron and Taxi Lane, and also widening taxiway SARA. Those projects would be driven by a potential new tenant over in those areas, and we will only do them if we secure a tenant for those areas, but they have to be included in the budget because obviously they are pretty significant dollar amounts. Questions on that? So in 2019, we started the passenger facility charge application process for passenger facility charge application number 5. We are starting the process for the next passenger facility charge application. We had our meeting with the airlines. And the way that it works is we have to designate specific projects for the use of these funds. So we pick the projects, we get the approval, we collect the funds. And once we've collected the funds for those projects, the passenger facility charge either expires or we do a new one for new projects. So we are lining up the next set of projects that would be paid for with the passenger facility charge. So we expect the approval will happen in October of this year, so we do not have a gap in collections. And with proposed passenger numbers, now we're looking at closer to $9 million a year in passenger facility charge collections. Okay. Top 10 operating revenue description. You can see our operating revenue continues to be down. Car rentals is probably the biggest one. Parking also significantly down. We are starting to see food and beverage come back, but not to the point where it was. And operating expense continues to be down as well. Primarily, again, in parking. Some of these are timing issues, but overall expenses continue to be down as well as revenue. Some upcoming events that we have scheduled. We have the inaugural flight to Austin and Chicago O'Hare. That is on June 17th. And then on July 2nd, we have the JetBlue inaugural to New York City. Just a reminder, we traditionally do not have airport commission meeting in July. So our next meeting would be in August. So that concludes my report. And I would be happy to answer any questions that members of the commission may have.
Any other questions from commissioners? Rebecca. Very good. Thank you, Rebecca. Very bullish report, I think, and based on everything that's going on in our community and the building craziness and everybody moving here, I would expect that we will continue to see those growth numbers increase and accelerate our comprehensive plan. So the challenge, I'm sure, to go into a pandemic, slow down, and then come out ahead of most other communities and then have to accelerate everything. So what we all know is predicting the future is next to impossible. So hopefully we have those plans in place that we're able to rally, and I know you do. So thank you very much for your leadership. So at this point, we move to commissioners' comments. This is the opportunity for commissioners to offer any insights, shares, any experience they've had in travel or with our own airport, or just general observations they'd like to provide. And so, Bill, I think we'll start with you.
Well, I don't really have anything airport related, but I attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting where your speaker made his presentation, and I thought he was very impressive. In fact, I'd like to have him come back to present to the commission at some point. He was really good, informative. Thank you.
Well, don't have a lot to add. As usual, I appreciate the staff that keeps the airfield open for those of us that use it. And I also have an appreciation for the folks that, and with the FAA that manned the tower and the approach and folks. They do an outstanding job for us. I did mention one thing to Alex, and he's going to see if he can talk to the tower folks for us. But for those of us that fly single engine conventional gear airplanes, when they don't turn the boat around, when the wind starts coming from the west and they keep have us landing to the east, it makes it a little challenging to land. And so I wish the FAA was here today, but Alex says he's going to mention it to me for me. The last 2 or 3 times I've been coming in, it's a quartering tailwind with a kind of airplane I fly makes every landing a real adventure. But other than that, I appreciate everybody at the airport. They do an outstanding job for us, and so do the FAA folks.
Thank you. General?
Well, I would just add that I had a chance to fly a number of times commercially. And recent trip to Phoenix called to get a rental car. Of the 10 rental car companies, not a single vehicle of any size or shape available. And I was shocked. I could not believe that they'd be totally out of cars. So rental car shortage is alive and well in Phoenix, I'll tell you that. I'm hoping it's not quite that bad here, but it was a real shock because we made the same trip 30 days earlier. Word to the wise, if you're gone, the rental car is a real issue. It's down there. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
The private corporate charter is alive and well. It's been really busy. And from a general aviation standpoint too, the Boise Airport has definitely rebounded, and kudos to the tower, and also coordination with the construction. And we're doing some construction on the taxi lanes and such, and appreciate having both runways open as much as possible. I know that's a sensitive topic for a lot of pilots and also tower. So everybody's doing their best, and we appreciate that.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Clegg?
Well, I would just add to the report that the airport put out, the RFP on the industrial land, that there's a tremendous amount of interest in the industrial land around the airport. I don't know yet what impact that will have on air freight, but it's likely over time that it will certainly impact air freight. And it won't be just mail, it'll be different kinds. And so look forward to working with the airport on figuring out how to make that as seamless as possible.
Great, thank you. I have had one flight in the last, year, I think, since my last flight returning from Toronto right before everything shut down last March 1st. And it was just a little hop down to Salt Lake. The plane was pretty full, and we did have rental cars. That was 2 weeks ago. It is a different experience even still to be walking through airports because it's not like it used to be. But it's a temporary lull, clearly. And we'll probably look back on these days and go, remember when no one is in the center seat, how lovely that was? It's unlikely to see that again. So thank you again for all you do.
Yeah.
So I see there is no new business on the agenda. And so at this point, we would open up for any questions and answers from the public, either here in person or online. However, we know that they want to talk to us online. So is there a chat or something where people can be acknowledged?
So
I believe they would have had to pre-register
Okay.
to comment online.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it very much. So, yes.
I did not get put on the agenda, but if I could just have a moment of the committee's time, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay.
would you come to the podium and state your
Sure.
name?
Yeah, my name is Ted Chester, and I'm the general manager and the operating partner of Precision Propeller, which is a business at the airport property. So we lease property from the Boise Airport. We come into little issues that I'd like the committee to maybe consider. The argument of lengthening the lease agreement terms. The argument I propose is that the lease agreement is pretty well written. It protects the airport very well in almost any regard. And so really when it comes down to the length term of the lease, it's really not even a factor anymore. The way it's written to protect the property, the way the property looks, its usage, all that type of activity that would take place on the land is protected in the lease agreement. So really what the term of the lease agreement does, it prevents investing. And so banks don't like 5-year terms. The federal government SBA loan program will not look at a 5-year term. And so we miss out on funding and loan opportunities. And so it forces us to go into private sector for funding and take on partnership agreements that would not be beneficial to the employees. So once Precision Propellers is in this situation right now where it either needs to take on an outside partner, which would prevent cash flow purposes being used for bringing on new employees, investing in the property, investing in the business, bringing on a partnership really takes from those funds, takes from the cash flow. And so I would propose that the lease agreement's almost not, if you looked at a lease agreement of 5 years or 99 years, I know 99 years is a long term, kind of ridiculous, but I want to use it as an example that the city would be protected equally in either case, whether it was 5 or 99. And if you look at the lease agreement, all it would do was bring benefit to the city, where banks would look at it and say, the city does want money invested here. The city does 99 years. That means these guys want a relationship. These guys they want us there. They want the money there. They want infrastructure there. They want us to build. Otherwise it becomes this 5-year term, which to a bank makes it look like short terms, balloon payments, a lot of risky loaning opportunities for the entrepreneur, for the business. And so I just wanted to present that and just take a few minutes of your time. That's it. I appreciate you guys listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you have any questions for me.
Madam Chairman,
Go ahead.
I guess I would remind the commission that 15 years ago, 17 years ago, there were a lot of leases at the airport that hadn't been looked at in years and years and years. And it took a long time to get through them all and update them and make sure that we had modern agreements with good liability agreements, all of the things in them. So I can see that the beginning term as a 5-year term might be too short, and maybe we could consider a longer first term, but then shorter renewal terms. But I don't want to see the airport get in the position where they're years and years behind on collecting what they should get in lease payments because those agreements are set in stone. So that would be my concern, that this makes perfect sense to me, but as we do it, we make sure that we have escalator clauses in it, and that even if the first term is a longer one, we still have shorter renewal terms.
Thank you, Commissioner Flake. I agree. My comment was going to be, I can see as an entrepreneur that this is a very personal issue for you, and I appreciate your willingness to come forward and share your experience with us. Entrepreneurs are the life and blood of our community, and we want them to be successful. And so I appreciate the input from Commissioner Flake, and we'll ask the airport to take your input under consideration and let us know.
I would propose that we take this as an action item and we can send you a review of the lease. We have almost 300 leases, so I don't remember the specifics of every single one. So I would suggest that we go back and take a look at this, and we'll send you a summary of what the issues are. There's a number of issues for term, including investment, making sure that we have the right regulatory requirements for insurance, compliance with our federal grants. One of the big issues that we faced with term in recent years is needing airport property for different purposes. So for example, we have some hangar leases that we're not renewing because we need that space for overnight parking for commercial aircraft or a rental car garage so without going back and looking specifically at this one, we're also looking at the highest and best use of the property as well as the term. So I would suggest that we take this as an action item related to this specific use, and then perhaps even for broader commission knowledge, just an explanation of where we are at with some of our airfield properties, because we've also had a number of inquiries for vacant parcels, and we're almost to the point where we don't have additional places to put people. And so we're really trying to prioritize the highest and best use of different parcels. So we can bring that back to commission.
When would be a reasonable time to do so?
I think we can do an interim memo if you would like before the next commission meeting, and then we can add a presentation to our next commission agenda
In August.
in August about leases and property
Terrific.
as a new business item.
Any other observations?
Madam Chair, just as an observation, it would occur to me that a propeller outfit is fairly germane to an airport, so I think there's a reason to have you here.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Seems that maybe we have a question in the chat. Okay. So the question was, if it isn't too convenient, could you briefly run through the construction timeline again? Just the rough dates on upcoming bid releases. Thank you. So the one construction that we have that we're going out to bid right now will be the parking garage. That will be late summer, early fall for that bid document. And then the car rental bid will be next summer. So I didn't get into bids of all of the taxiway projects and some of those other things, but we can include that as part of the minutes for this meeting.
Seeing no one else, I propose that we have a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Great to see everybody. Enjoy your summer, and we'll see you again in August.